everyone and welcome to this video in which I am going to try to show you why I think that Guild Wars 2 is a wonderful game and especially worth getting into just a few days before the second expansion releases. Guild Wars 2 is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game developed by Iron.net and published by NCSoft. It is also the second installment of the Guild Wars franchise, and while I have not played the first game, I have been able to find extreme enjoyment into playing the second opus as a standalone MMO. Guild Wars 2 already breaks away from the classic MMO storytelling concept by having regular patches that deliver deep story. That is to say that every few weeks you're gonna be getting further into the story of the MMO. At first, it was every second week that we got a living story patch, meaning that every little bit of story had a visual impact on the open world, and with the first expansion, these patches grew more distant from each other. That meant that we got more polished and in-depth storytelling, which truly was good for the entirety of the game. Now we have a more clear idea of who is the true mastermind behind the conflicts rising all over Tyria, and we are about to delve into the true climax of the story as the second expansion pack approaches. But what would an MMO be if all it had to its name was the storytelling? Guild Wars 2 also has wonderful graphics, and while some players who have played more recent MMOs such as Black Desert Online might find it a little bit lackluster, they still live up to the name of the franchise. Guild Wars 2 has an extremely huge open world, with each map having different landscapes than the previous ones. This means that even if all you are doing is exploring the video game, you are gonna be able to see extremely great detailed environments and to truly explore them to the last nook and cranny. Speaking of the graphics, we have had a lot of iterations of people from the community trying to come up with some better graphics for the game. As such, we have had a lot of reshade presets as well as the development of its own application, Guild Wars 2 Hook, which makes it so that you can see further in each map that you are. That means that there is no fog or blurred horizon and you can see to the extreme points of the maps while standing where you are. Of course, this is an amazing improvement on the graphics of this 5-year-old game and truly makes it a new experience for the veteran and the new player alike. Gameplay wise, Guild Wars 2 breaks the mold by giving up on the more classic mana bar and instead focuses on only having cooldowns. The building in Guild Wars 2 relies on two things: the weapon set and the utility bar. The weapon you choose has a direct impact on the skills you're going to be able to use. You can carry at most 2 weapon sets at a time, which means 2 sets of 5 different skills. Then you have the choice of the utility skills, which are a number of 5. The one slot is taken by the healing skill, the last slot is taken by the elite one. In between, you can choose between a wide array of skills in order to make your own unique build. That means that every single class has access to its own healing, which is very good for RPG players who are going to be more oriented towards solo content, but also for any other player who wishes to rely more on their own. For people who might be taken aback by this very specific side of the game, do not worry, there is a more classic playstyle closer to the Holy Trinity when you get into the higher level instant content, that is to say, fractals or raids. In these, you will have DPS dealers, something more akin to a tank, as well as a dedicated healer, which is usually a druid, my own main. As I have just mentioned, fractals and raids, it is now time to go on about the content. Guild Wars 2 is a game that has been there for 5 years, and the previous installment of the franchise, Guild Wars, was there for another 7 beforehand. This means that the maps have been polished and the content in the game has also gotten to a whole new level of entertainment for the player, that is to say, you and I. The open world of Tyria features dozens of maps, fully explorable, packed with events, quests, specific characters and NPCs that you can talk to in order to learn more about the lore or the story, as well as minigames even in the form of smaller dungeons or jumping puzzles. With Heart of Phones, we were given verticality in the maps. That means that instead of just exploring them at ground level or by jumping off on some ledges and going upwards that way, you can now glide up and down in the maps. They have been given a whole new level of explorability, and this is just amazing. Now the developers know how to please the player base, and they have given that sense of verticality to every single map in the core game. You can revisit any area that you used to get into with that new incredible mechanic that is gliding. Each episode of Living Story Season 3 has also brought us a new map with everything that was available before. That means that these maps were given the verticality from Heart of Thorns and the possibility to glide around, as well as some more specific way to move inside of these maps. But the true strength of Guild Wars 2, at least in my opinion, lies within the instant content. That means anything that is not open world, but instead reduced into a specific instance with a certain number of people able to enter. At first, in the core game, these were the dungeons. Apart from the story path, it was tied into the personal story of your character, as well as being used as a way to fill the gap in the storytelling between the first and the second game. Were given explorable paths. Much higher in difficulty, these paths gave you some specific hints about the lore and the story of the game, at the same time as having you try out some mechanics on each of the encounters and bosses within. These dungeons are still relevant up to now and can be played whenever you want, as there are always some party looking to recruit a new adventurer to delve into this content. Then we got the Fractals of the Mist, instances unbound by the time and which tell a story that is independent from that of Tyria. Of course, lore aspects are always present as per the usual Guild Wars 2 storytelling. However, the fractals represent a major challenge for the PvE player. No less than 100 levels await you, and while some of the fractals are repeat of previous levels, the last tier of them sports a completely different level of difficulty in the form of challenge modes. Different encounters than the ones you were used to, with even more mechanics, even harder bosses to kill. That is the challenge in Guild Wars 2, and if you are looking to surpass yourself, you have stepped in the right universe. With the first expansion of Guild Wars 2, the game's instance content was furthered and we received the raids. Raids are 10-man instances aiming at delivering a true challenge for the most hardcore part of the community. However, Guild Wars 2 being a game that boasts about the accessibility to the more casual player, raids are still doable by any person in the game. If you are able to master the mechanics of them, you are offering yourself an endless source of enjoyment. Each wing that was given to us has its own encounters with its own specific mechanics, and you will soon find yourself enjoying strolling through them on a weekly basis. All of the raids share a single currency, and that one specific currency allows you to buy unique skins that are wielded by the very bosses you will be fighting. What we can truly boast about within the community would be the thriving LFG. There are always groups forming at any time of the day, and even I would say that I met some of the more prevalent members of my community within that very LFG. But Guild Wars 2 is not only about PvE. The first game, Guild Wars, boasted about a very complete and entertaining PvP mode, and this can also be seen within Guild Wars 2. Just think about it for a moment. We have two different game modes, Conquest and Assault, which is called in this game Stronghold. These allow 5-man team to face each other in either capture the point style fights or into a more assault the enemy keep game mode. You have the possibility to queue both solo and as a duo, and a solid rating system with its own reward and progression pace is truly what keeps PvP alive for the major part of the population. You can find within the very game some leaderboards that are consultable at any moment, so that you may always know where you stand in front of the community. This, of course, always compels you to do better, and the very good rewards of the game mode truly make it shine as one that was supported by Ironet. A lot of tournaments are being organized on a monthly basis, and if you are truly into that game mode, you would be able to join one of these and shine on your own. But PvP in Guild Wars 2 does not stop simply at the 5v5 more classic game style. There is its very own realm versus realm game mode, which is labeled as world versus world. Each of the servers on each of the region of Guild Wars 2 has its own spot within that fray, and you may enter battles with dozens of players facing each other in not a single double-way fight between two servers, but a triple-way one, with its own very specific game of alliances and calculating the next move of two different armies. The united spirit behind the server pride is what truly makes this game mode incredible. And if you have ever played any game that had a faction system, you are gonna be able to enjoy yourself to the fullest within this game mode. Imagine no less than 20 factions facing each other in a three-way battle. You know you want to be part of that one. One of the other major strengths of the game lies within its progression system. There is in Guild Wars 2 a no-grind policy. You're not gonna be finding yourself killing the same group of mobs 100 times over and over just to get enough items for the quest. That is not how Guild Wars 2 works. Once you have acquired the game's highest equipment tier, it will remain relevant forever. You are not going to be finding yourself in the new expansion or any new patch having to run after a new tier of gear or leveling your character to match the highest level again. Once you get to level 80 and deck yourself out in ascended equipment, you will always be relevant. That very gear can not only be stat swapped to fit the latest iteration of the metagame, but it is also unbound from your character, which means that if you make another character of the same class or even another character of the same armor weight, you're going to be able to simply move the gear to your bank and onto the new character seamlessly. This kind of quality of life is also what marks Guild Wars 2 as the most user-friendly MMO I have ever played. Progression does not stop simply at gearing yourself. In Guild Wars 2, skins and fashion play an extremely important role into making your own character unique. The wardrobe system that was introduced in 2014 truly shows the mentality of the developers towards its own very specific game mode, that is Fashion Wars 2. You can use any unlocked skin that you have on any character of the relevant armor weight at any time without a single restriction. With the first expansion, a new form of progression was introduced in Guild Wars 2. That is the mastery system. This type of progression is mostly for the ability to use specific mechanics relevant to the maps you are in. That means, for example, that the gliding we mentioned earlier is actually nothing more than a mastery within the Heart of Thorns expansion pack. Some other masteries might be required for the further exploration of specific maps. However, you are never gonna be stuck unable to do content just because you do not have the relevant masteries. You will always find a way to work around in order to be able to experience the game as it was meant to be. Earlier, I have mentioned the wardrobe as being one of the most important parts of the quality of life that is prevalent in Guild Wars 2. I have also talked about the outbound equipment, which can give you some very interesting option for the gearing of your new characters. But apart from that, we have had a heap ton of quality of life updates. Just like this, I'm gonna give you a few of them so you can handpick what truly matters the most for you. Wallet currencies are account bound. Guilds are account bound. Banks are account bound. Achievements and titles are account bound. You can manage your inventory with just a simple click. You can acquire better equipment through the collection system. You do not need to do any complicated crafting to deck yourself out in the most highest tier of equipment. You can waypoint around without having to run all over the maps, and even if you need to run all over the maps, you can just use any of the extreme high amount of movement skills present on every single class in the game. The game itself screams quality of life, and with what we're getting in Path of Fire, I am looking forward in the future to further and further improvements when it comes to how every player can have the best time playing this game. Finally, I think that a point should be made about the community. Reddit boasts about the fact that Guild Wars 2 would be having the single nicest community ever seen in an MMO before. And I must say, based on my personal experience, that this is quite true. Over the years, I have met many few people that I have been able to bond truly with. This was a most amazing experience, and I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that the community in Guild Wars 2 is one of the nicest I have ever been given to see. Now, if after all of this speech that has lasted for quite a long time, you are still not convinced to grab the game, maybe this one last argument might just make you sway. Guild Wars 2 is a game that does not have a subscription. It is buy to play. This means that you can enjoy the entirety of the Guild Wars 2 content with a mere €50 or dollars. Isn't that amazing? Now, just make the leap and join us over in the adventure. We're 5 days away from Path of Fire, and you should be with us.